After 10 days of calm, the United States called Beijing and admitted that the relationship between the two countries could not continue to deteriorate. In fact, Musk, Trump's great benefactor, had already said that China and the United States should not be enemies. May 22nd. My country's Foreign Minister Ma Zhaoxu had a phone call with U.S. Deputy Secretary of State Landau on Sino-US relations and important issues of common concern. Both sides acknowledged the importance of Sino-US relations and agreed to continue to maintain communication. This was the first phone call between the two countries' senior diplomats after the Geneva talks. Prior to this, Director Wang Yi met with Asia Society President Kong Jin. Foreign Minister Ma Zhaoxu met with former U.S. Ambassador to China Baucus and his Montana University student delegation to China. Such interactions between China and the United States are quite rare, especially in the context of the tariff war between China and the United States. In these interactions, most of them were initiated by the U.S. side. The passivity of the Trump administration in this tariff war has obviously been exposed. Recently, U.S. Commerce Secretary Lutnick was slapped in the face by the Americans themselves at an event. The senior U.S. official has always insisted that although the United States is imposing large-scale tariffs on countries around the world, it will not have any impact on American consumers. In addition, the United States will reach trade agreements with many countries, so the so-called impact is even less likely to exist. However, when he asked the audience whether they were affected by the tariffs, the answer he got was unquestionable, yes, and the voices were loud and unanimous. They collectively slapped Lutnick in the face, which made Lutnick very embarrassed. Lutnick insisted that the tariff costs were absorbed by foreign and American companies, but the reality was like a loud slap in the face. As if he noticed the awkward atmosphere on the scene, Lutnick quickly changed the topic. He said that China's tariff measures did make him feel very painful. Not only that, even Trump himself felt very bad, but the trade war with China must continue. This pain is very necessary. But the reality is that China and the United States have achieved a phased cooling, and the Chinese side has repeatedly emphasized that it was the US government that took the initiative to contact China. Lutnick's attitude of fighting China to the end at this time is indeed a bit like a hindsight. Not only that, his words also successfully dragged Trump into the water and directly exposed Trump's past. After China and the United States reduced tariffs on each other, Trump kept talking hard, saying that reaching an agreement with the United States is something China needs very much. The US tariff policy makes China feel it is very painful. Now, the words of the US Secretary of Commerce have completely exposed the mask of the US government and admitted that the United States is just deceiving itself. Tariffs are essentially tolls. Importers must either raise prices or lay off employees to reduce costs. A study by the University of Chicago shows that the actual tariff costs borne by American consumers are as high as 125% to 225%. Trump once touted tariffs as a magic wand to make America great again, but it turned into a farce that shot himself in the foot. Take the US retail giant Walmart as an example. Trump has been boasting that by raising tariffs, he can force manufacturing to return to the United States and create more jobs. But the reality is that Walmart cannot bear the pressure of tariffs and has planned to lay off 1,500 employees. Walmart is the largest importer in the United States. About 60% of the goods on its platform are imported from China. Even though China and the United States have reduced high tariffs according to the current tariff rate, Walmart still faces the risk of bankruptcy if it does not raise prices. After Walmart asked Trump for help, Trump accused Walmart of making enough money and should bear the tariffs itself. If Walmart wants to continue to make a profit, it will inevitably need to raise prices, and the one who will pay the bill in the end is still Walmart. It is American consumers. Lutnick said that companies will absorb the costs. But the reality is that small and medium-sized business owners cried at the hearing that raising taxes means forcing me to lay off employees. The outcome of this tariff war has long been doomed. The bold words of politicians will eventually become numbers on supermarket receipts. American politicians are now covering their ears and stealing bells. They are ultimately deceiving themselves. Although the tariff game between China and the United States has been paused, the impact of tariffs is still continuing. The United States originally wanted to use tariff policies to give many countries in the world a warning. In this way, the United States can reach a dominant clause without much talk. However, China's countermeasures made the United States compromise. Other countries followed suit. Although the United States left a 90-day buffer period for 75 countries, negotiations are not achieved overnight. Moreover, when countries see China's actions, they will definitely propose something that is in the interests of their own countries. Many EU countries have clearly refused to take over the 10% base tariff clause similar to the US-UK agreement. Swedish Minister of Foreign Aid and Foreign Trade Dusa said strongly that if the EU can only obtain the same conditions as the US-UK agreement, the United States will wait for the EU to retaliate. Even if the United States reaches an agreement with one country a day, it can only resolve 90 countries in 90 days. Moreover, this idea is not realistic at all. The negotiations between the United States and Japan alone have lasted for more than a month, and there is still no agreement. When it is difficult to reach a consensus in the negotiations, the 90-day suspension period expires. What should the United States do? Therefore, Trump is now in a dilemma and has not come up with a better solution. It is no wonder that Juncker said he was afraid. It is not difficult to find that Americans are now very contradictory. This is because they underestimated China's trade actions and could not cover the consequences. They can only find ways to make themselves lose less ugly. Also on the 22nd, Ren Hongbin, chairman of the China Council for the Promotion of International Trade, met with visiting CEO Dimon of Morgan Chase in Beijing. At the meeting, the two sides discussed issues such as promoting exchanges between the business communities of China and the United States and deepening cooperation in the field of financial investment. It can be seen that we are now doing both official and private work. The channels for high-level dialogue between China and the United States are unobstructed, and communication between enterprises is also indispensable. It can even be said that this is more effective than the official dialogue between China and the United States, as China Dimon, a Wall Street giant, has attracted much attention during his visit to China. Although the China Council for the Promotion of International Trade took the initiative to invite him, in the current international context, he himself wanted to come to China to test the waters. His recent speeches all revealed his distrust of the Trump administration and his pessimism about the current US tariff policy. He warned at least 6 times that the US economy is about to fall into recession, and all of them were caused by the tariff policy. Dimon clearly mentioned during his visit to China that the US does not want to decouple. It is true that Morgan Chase is a long-term investor in China. There are all kinds of problems that cause concern now, but we must face the real world, not the ideal world, and we will continue to grow. According to reports, Dimon admitted that due to rising tariffs and so-called national security issues, American companies are facing increasing pressure when dealing with China and other countries. However, he pointed out that China is developing rapidly in technological innovation and continues to attract global attention. These are the reasons why Morgan Chase will not give up the Chinese market. The general consensus is that companies will continue to do business here. Dimon said that trade negotiations may bring about some adjustments, but I think the US government does not want to leave China. He also said that Morgan Chase is facing pressure from local governments on various issues, and what the company can do is to respond in a rational way and serve customers well. Bloomberg News introduced that Dimon made the above remarks when the US Department of Defense recently included Chinese companies such as CATL in the so-called list of military-related companies. The US House of Representatives China Amnesty Committee also wrote to urge Morgan Chase and Bank of America to withdraw from the underwriting of CATL's Hong Kong IPO. However, the two US banks finally decided to continue to promote the deal. CATL's listing in Hong Kong has also become the largest IPO in the world so far this year. So, does the Trump administration really not know this? In fact, it is not. They are very clear about the impact of their decision on Sino-US relations and the future economic development of the United States, but they cannot directly raise the white flag and reduce tariffs on China to zero. In the view of the Trump administration, these still exist. High tariffs are bargaining chips for negotiating with China and cannot be easily abandoned. Trump administration lawyers, the U.S. Judiciary Ministry official Shumate admitted that the purpose of Trump's tariff policy is to create pressure. These tariffs can provide Trump with the bargaining chips he needs for negotiations. Shumate also warned that if these tariffs are withdrawn, it will weaken the United States' position in Sino-US trade negotiations. In fact, Musk has long said that China and the United States should not be enemies. 2 days ago, Musk once again emphasized that China's strength is extraordinary, but most people outside China do not know this. Musk is not only a great contributor to Trump's return to the White House, but also a media giant with extensive business in China. So what he said cannot be ignored. After all, this is the experience and truth he has summed up in the process of dealing with Chinese partners in the past few years. However, Trump did not listen to the words of this great benefactor. In general, the current international situation is unpredictable. We must remain highly vigilant and do our best for Sino-US relations and make the worst plans. Today's program ends here.